Yay! Okay, and this is not my laptop, so this should be very interesting today. And I've got a browser open. Okay, so how many of you have used Power BI? 1, 2. Okay, so I hope you're not bored. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is sort of go through my process of where I'm getting things at. I got the data set that we're working on right now came from the government. Woohoo! Centers for Medicare and Medical Services. They actually have data sets available from Medicaid on their usages that you can find over here. So various research. It took me a while to figure, they changed this, unfortunately, surprisingly, on a regular basis. So sometimes it takes me a while to find where they moved the data set that I wanted to before. But here's a list of different kinds of things you can find. So that is where I got my data. So the first thing I'm going to do here is move the mic so I can see the whole screen. Okay. Okay, so the first thing I've done is I've actually pulled up a sort of a data cleaning tool because I know that about 80% of your time is spent cleaning the data. OpenRefine is an open source one powered by Google. I think it was originally called Google Refine. It still uses Java, so be prepared to install Java when you run this. Okay. So some of the things that you can do in here, and we probably should have hit this button. So after you can upload a CSV file, an Excel file, there's very different kinds of sources. So then what you can do, and this is the reason I did it today, is it has lots of options for editing the cells, like common transformations. We're just gonna trim all the white space. Huh? Yeah, okay. So that's the first thing I did was you had common transformations. You can trim the leading and trailing. You can collapse the consecutive spaces, which, you know, when you have, if it's a lot of, you know, hand-entered data, the odds are you're going to have a lot of trouble. The next thing I like to do with this one is, in that itself, is cluster and edit. So this is really great for getting things that are very similar, finding your typos actually. In this case, I have a bunch of things that I am going to think are probably the same thing. So I'm just going to, you know, merge and recluster. And same with these, you know, that one's a big one. Got 2 of each. I'm not a doctor, so sometimes I'm going to leave some of it alone, but that's just sort of what you can do to get your data set sort of matched up with all those extra things, the typos, the sort of different kinds. And there's different kinds. You got key collision, and if you guys want to hear more about the various clustering methods, let us know, and that can be a later topic. But for right now, I'm sure everybody's happy to just let the program do it. Depending on what I may want to study, like in this case, I have lots of amino acids at different percents. So in this case, I might just want to merge them all because I don't really care about the percentage. I just want to know if it's there. And you know, you can just, or you can ignore it and just recluster. Okay. Okay, so that is what I did with OpenRefine. Do you have any questions about that part so far? Okay. Yeah.
What kind of data does it accept? Open or find? Is it just CSV files or is it text files?
It's CSV files.
What was the question?
Oh, sorry. What kind of data types does the Open Refined accept? And it's generally most of your typical data formats, CSV, Excel, text, TX. Those are the only ones I've challenged it with. I have used considerably more rows than this. I think I've actually used it on over 1 million rows. So it's, I mean, but that depends on more of your hardware than the program. So, and I mean, there's lots of other things you can do. And so it's also a great tool for sort of searching for things to, like, you want to delete certain things in your data that's not, you know, is not good or not going to be useful. So you can use that as well. Coffee. Okay. So that is data refine. And I have never used data refine in front of the TV on a Sunday night, you know, to clean up stuff because, you know, it's a very easy thing to do. Okay, so Power BI is what we're here to talk about today. And this is a very sort of introductory lesson into visuals with Power BI. If you would like to present on more advanced things, let us know. So the first thing I have here, I've uploaded my data set, which you can, let me start over. Power BI desktop is free. So if you guys don't have it and you want to play around with it, you can just go and download it for free. The web service will probably give you a 60-day trial as far as whether or not you want to upload it and share to the web, but the actual desktop is free. So you can go play around with it. There's 2 versions. There's the desktop that works with the cloud, and then there's the desktop that works with an on-prem server. So depending on what your future needs will be. Okay, so now the first thing that I usually do when I get into my Power BI, it'll ask you to upload your data set. So I uploaded my data set. The next thing I like to do is think about everything that I want to, and of course you're not signed in, but that's okay. You can go to the marketplace and download various things. Like I downloaded the aquarium because I like to play with the fishies. Then there's also, ours might be standard now. It wasn't in the last version. And then I also downloaded a chiclet slicer. But there's different kinds of ways to, sort of subject-specific ways, a lot of sort of graphics for financials and things that may be more useful depending on what data you deal with. Okay, so I started out by making my fishy with just the state name in my data and the cost, the aggregate cost paid by Medicare. And that was for, I have 4 years of data in this data set. And I can see my data set right over here. So I've got the state name over here. And I added my year column over here. Okay. So that's the first thing I did because the fishies are cool. And you also can have more than one fishy. You can change it.
Does the fish represent something, or is this just a wallpaper?
Oh, sorry. The fish represent the aggregate cost paid per state. So each of the different fish, like this is the Florida one.
And I'm sure you can change
California. Yeah. So this was just a fun little thing to get started with to, yeah, because it's awesome. Yeah. So, so if I wanted to, I could get really boring and I could just, okay. So we're gonna do some basics today. I'm gonna go over to my data set because I realized that I want to get to the right menu. This year over here, yeah. Okay. It's not zooming. Oh, there we go. Okay, it's not gonna zoom the headers for you, sorry. Okay. Up here at the very top, I have something called data categorization. This one's uncategorized, but we won't summarize. Why is it trying to add Maybe I'm the wrong one. Yeah, okay, so this one over here is trying to sum, but it's the year, so I don't want it to sum. So first thing I'm gonna do is don't summarize. Okay. Now I can only have 4 fish because now I'm looking at the cost per year. The total cost for the United States of how much was paid to Medicare. Or paid out of Medicare. So, let's see. The yellow fishy says 2016 was much smaller and 2015 was a lot. Okay. And we will stop playing with fishies now. Any questions about the fishies?
Who lets you have that much fun at work?
I get to demo Power BI a lot to the different departments to encourage them to use it. So the fishies are entertaining. They might never use it except for the first time they make a Power BI report, probably same as you guys, but it's fun to start with. Okay. So, delete. Okay, so depending on what I want to look at, perhaps maybe I want to look at the year and the state and the aggregate cost. And it's just going to make whatever visual it thinks is a good idea. So actually, this one isn't a bad idea. Now, if I really hate my colors of this visual, then I can go up here. Can you guys see this? Is this really small at the top? I don't think it'll let me make the cancel. It wouldn't let me make the header bigger. Okay. Now I can switch the theme up here if you need like high contrast, or if you need like colorblind, which I know a lot of you need. If you want to, you can create your own theme. It's not really hard. You have to make a JSON file, but generally you can copy and paste from another JSON file and just change like your hex codes to whatever color you want. So, and there's a lot of other things to download. So if you're trying to make a report for your company that you're going to be making the same color scheme over and over again, then you can go in and edit your report. Which, I mean, I work at OU. We live in red. So, crimson, yes. Somewhere between hex code 710000 and 910000. Okay. Don't ask me. But then there's lots of them you can download. And here is an example. Go back up. Not my mouse. Okay, so here's an example of a JSON file. So really you can just go in and edit if you want a black background versus a white background. Your data colors, you can change the ones that you like to the theme you want. There is a lot more if you have experience with JSON in terms of the things that you can edit very specific kinds of charts to look very specific. But I'm not going to do that because that would embarrass me today. Okay. So you can change the theme to make it look whatever you want. Okay, so I don't really like the way this particular one is designed, so I'm just going to go use one of these happy little buttons, and maybe I just want a table. And then I can sort my table. Let's see. So there's a lot of options you could do. Like I could just, not really sure what a gauge would be representing unless you want to like say get to $1 billion. I don't really want this to be every year. So I am going to put in a filter. And I'm just going to look at 2016. This still is probably not the smart way to do it, so we can do a card. Do you guys have any requests for what you want to look at?
You mean with this feature or in general?
Sort of with my data set. Oh, I said with my data set. Ah.
Oh yeah. So how do you deal with if like someone, like I saw in there someone said NA, we were filling up some of the things in NA. Is that something that we use the data refine techniques or?
It depends on what that NA represents in your data. Like you could get rid of that with data refine. I could, over here in my data set, I can, there's different ways you can like get rid of it, you know. Oh, it's not gonna do that over here. Text filters. You know, you can do a filter to get rid of your NAs here. Filter out your just the, like in this case.
I guess what I'm trying to ask is like, how do you decide what's appropriate to do when it's going too far in terms of being?
Oh, I'm sure there's a big philosophical question you just asked. How do you decide what is in your, what to clean out of your data and what's gone too far? Was the question, and then yeah, that's, you know, a lot of this has to depend on the questions I'm trying to answer and the quality of my data. So, you know, NA here represents the fact that there were no beneficiaries over 65 for this drug. So that's important information. Now, if I'm only worried about people under 65, then probably in Power BI I would get rid of it. In the Open Refine, I might keep it in case I want to use the same sort of cleaned up data set for people over 65 or the whole set. So I think I use Open Refine to really sort of clean up the various object elements in terms of the typos or get them all unified into sort of the same name. And then it depends on how often you're going to use that data. Then I tend to stop there in Open Refine, and then I'll probably, whatever in Power BI is when I might sort out some of this stuff. There should be a whole, you know, college class on this. It's still an evolving world. Not a lot of people show each other how they clean their data outside of their own little office, which is kind of what we're trying to work on here. But that's generally my take on it. Depends on what my data is and where it's coming from. In other places, this NA might indicate that it's a junk line and I need to get rid of everything. I have been prone to remove some of this stuff in R. I will fall back on R, especially if the data sets are large, because then I can just clean it up without having to open any really GUI or anything. So that's what I'd say. 2. Okay. Any other quick questions? Yeah.
So I work with product managers who want like a standardized dashboard, but then can drill into details as they need, and so it becomes this gigantic data set with years upon years and all of these product selections. And, so they want the whole data set when they want it, but I'm just kind of wondering the limitations on how much you can import at a time, or if there's, because if I try to import the whole thing, it just comes to like a snail's pace.
Yeah. What's your data file format?
I've tried it with an Excel, like just uploading an Excel file, and I've also got the ability to connect straight to the database.
Okay. So to start over with the question, she needs to make dashboards for, we'll say, upper level management, because it's a pretty common problem. And they want the quick overview, but after the overview, they want to be able to drill down. And they want to drill down again. And they want to drill down again. Okay. I have not had any trouble connecting to a database with hundreds of millions of lines. In that term. One of the things about Power BI is you have, and this is where you have to watch your security on the other end when you upload it, is because in the back end you have all your lines over here. So if you need to drill down farther, then you've got that information there. But that goes back into how much information you're going to import in the system. I don't really consider, Microsoft doesn't consider this right here a dashboard. This would be a report. If you have the web service, then you can upload when you upload your report, you can select various elements in your report to show on that front screen when whoever logs in. So then they're going to get, so they can see that quick KPI element of it. But most of the time what I find is when administrators talk about dashboards, they really want an interactive report. Your first page might be what you would consider the dashboard. With the upper level elements, this is how much we have, spent this month, and this is how much we've earned or something. But beyond that, after that, when all the drill downs and everything, you're really getting into a report. And that's generally the way I structure my dashboard or my reports, is the front page is generally like the logo and my name and all the contact information. The second page, that's the dashboard. And that's where I save it on. And then the rest of the pages kind of add to it. Okay. I would try connecting to the database, and beyond that, I'd say it's a limitation more of the hardware. I've got a suite set up, so I don't think about these things. Yeah.
Well, kind of related to that. So, like, I see like you're using OpenFind and Power BI, and I can see like doing an additional report of that. Like, what if you have a kind of data set where you have like a few records every day or something, and then you have to bring that in, clean that up? Is there any way to automate some of that, or you just have to do it every time?
I will say that my process with OpenRefine hasn't been fine-tuned yet. It's a work in progress. You can, when you edit your data, edit queries, because I don't have this data set where it thinks it is. When you edit your queries over here, you can add, delete, change type. When you refresh your data, it's automatically going to apply those changes. Now, I think it's important that it's easy to add rows. Power BI is fine with adding rows. It tends to go bonkers if you try to add columns. So it's good to sort of keep that in mind.
So you have like a, this is where it's really her question. You made this dashboard, right? And it's a great dashboard for your executives, right? And let's say one of Instagram and have these categories, and then you add like one new thing into that. Will that automatically get populated through that?
If you, like in the report, you generally have to refresh it. If you've got the web service or the report server where you've hosted these things, you can schedule a refresh for your data. Yeah, so you can, like, if you know that it's going to be every night or every week after Friday, we've got one of those reports going on right now, every Friday afternoon. You know, sometimes it's not quite as useful. I think month-end kind of travels if you're doing financial data, so you might have to go in and tinker with it. But then you can schedule it, so you don't have to worry about that. Okay. I'm jumping around a little bit. Is there any other questions so far? One of the things that's sort of fun to do here is the map. Everybody likes maps. So I've got my state name here on one element. And then if I want to make sort of, that's not what I wanted. There we go. So I can change the size based on whatever element I want. And if you haven't, if you're new to Power BI, you got this little, big paint roller over here that lets you change your sort of data colors to something more pleasing or not pleasing. If you like purple. You can turn on labels or not. Where's that one? Okay. Change my bubble size. And when I get down them, I can turn the heat map on. So I can see, and this is pretty obvious that California is probably the one that's going to spend a lot of money versus other states. So that's just, what have I tried to do? You can get down into cities. There's sort of the embedded map. There's others that I know that you can link to, that you can get to zip code, and I'm not going to be able to tell you the name right now because I don't use them very often, but I do know they exist. So that would probably be a Google or YouTube. But right now, Power BI will base off of cities, which actually sometimes you have to like, sometimes you'll get something that's Paris, Texas, and you'll have to go in and play with it a little bit. Because it does like to put Paris, Texas over in Paris. I found, yeah, you learn a lot when you do these things. Like there's a bunch of other like random cities that also happen to appear to be countries and things like that. So that's an example of a map. I don't deal with maps very often, but I know that some of you might, depending on if you're tracking sales in certain venues and things like that. Okay. There's many ways, like right here, I have the year. Ooh, billions. Nope, not what I wanted. Yeah, okay. And so, I haven't done a drill through yet. Okay, so if I want to, right now, actually, I'm going to create another page. And don't select state first if you don't want a map. There you go. All right. So I want to just drill through by the year. So if I go back to this page right here, I should be able to drill through to my next page, just like that. And so it's just going to give me whatever year I selected. No, I haven't tried to do that. Okay, so can you create animation with, say, so it could sort of go through the different 2014, 15, 16, 13? And I have not tried to do that. So I shouldn't say no, but I don't know. I haven't seen it. There is something that I have been meaning to play with called storytelling, where you can sort of take snapshots of this and create sort of a data story. And it's another Microsoft thing inside Power BI. And I should note that, I mean, this isn't very sexy, but I have been switching what I would normally do in Power and like PowerPoint over to Power BI. If it's a heavy data story or something like that, then I import the images and create text pages and just use the Power BI to tell the story of or report on. And one of the things here, if you publish these reports, while I'm here, if you don't want them to sort of fiddle around with a if you don't, give me a card. Sorry, not my laptop. Actually, I don't own a laptop because I'm very bad at using them. Okay. So if you don't perhaps want people to, accidentally stumble on a page because they're going to get weird results like that, then you can come over here. Then you can hide your page like I just did. And so when you go in, you're going to just get whatever it is. It can look a little weird if you're putting like names of vendors in there. And if you stumble on that page, you got this like first one of the list is listed there. But when you drill through, it's going to give you the one you want. Like in this case, it's going to give me 2015's total. Okay. So, and that's helpful when you're creating dashboards for administrative people who are maybe less technically inclined to sort of keep them from doing things you don't want them to do. But you can keep going through your drill through and your drill through. I mean, I find most of the time that at some point I have to create a table with just the numbers, with, the state and the year. Well, I mean, when I mean just the numbers is that a lot of the times, especially if you're doing financial reporting, at some point they want to see something that looks like their old-fashioned Excel report. So it's just going to have your entire data set or the important items in a table that they can right-click and download. Whether they actually need it, most of them don't, but they feel more comfortable having it there until you've gotten them off of the habit. And sometimes it's a useful mechanism for checking yourself to make sure that your data is what it's meant to be. I didn't do perhaps any modeling in today's sort of discussion. But sometimes when you start modeling things, you can bring in multiple data sets into Power BI and connect them with keys like you would in a database. So you can join the various Excel files or an Excel file to your database file if you need to bring in more information. I deal with a lot where our database doesn't represent the data in the items we want it to represent. So they all have their own little decoding spreadsheet that you have to hook up to it. So you can bring in more than one data set and do that kind of modeling over here. Yeah, see, this is all the elements in my data set. Ooh. Yeah. My work computer is a touch screen, and my daughter discovered it and nearly freaked me out. Okay. We've got a couple minutes left. Are there any other questions? I know this hasn't really been a very heavy... I know this is a little random introduction to Power BI. I wanted to take that. Okay.
For a first time user getting into this, what would be some of your recommendations just to get your hands dirty and play around with some data sets?
My recommendation is always to go to Kaggle. Get yourself a data set. Power BI being a Microsoft product, you've used Excel, you've used PowerPoint, it's fairly self-explanatory. I think you go in there and but I mean, I go to Kaggle and just play around with it most of the time. I deal with the Medicare data mostly because it's an open data set and it's related to the stuff they do at the Health Science Center, so it's more meaningful to them when I play with it. But yeah, that's where I would get started. And it really, honestly, if you've used Microsoft products, you're not going to have trouble using this. I think that's there's a lot of them out there. There's Tableau, there's Power BI, there's a few others. But I think that's one of the reasons Power BI is sort of our choice, is because it's going off of other Microsoft products. You should have an easy time getting into it. There's plenty of tutorials out there for it, but yeah, I don't think I had 3 or 4 reports built before I ever looked at one. I mean, sometimes you can, I forgot to tell you, you can filter things. And so that might, when you start trying to filter things or turn filters on and off, is when I started, I think, looking at the YouTube videos. Yeah.
Just curious, what are some things that you don't like about it, and think that you wish you could have?
You know, I used Open Refine here at the beginning. Oh, sorry, repeat the question. What are some pros and cons of Power BI, things I wish I'd known I had in the beginning? We were testing products between Tableau and Power BI. I used Open Refine here to clean up my data. Tableau has a product called Tableau Prep, which I really like. It's really nice. But Tableau I didn't like so much. And as I said, Power BI seemed to be more of an all-in-one, because you can do a bit more of your data selection in Power BI. Things I wish I'd known. Yeah, I would if you start dealing with more than one data set, I would definitely watch some YouTube videos. When you're starting to model things, and this is where I don't have a database background. When you start to model things, Power BI only tends to go in one direction by default. You can change it to go both directions. So as a result, sometimes when you get your sort of aggregate amount, summarized total, they'll all be the same for whatever you got. And that's usually an indication that you need to change the direction in your model. So, you know, it would have if I had something connected, it could have all these states will all be like $1,000 each. And that's obviously wrong. And mostly that has to do with your model is in the wrong direction. So I would, that's when you start getting into modeling. I think before you go down that frustrating road, I just start watching YouTube videos first. But it can be very powerful. So I like that. This here, the chiclet slicer, this is another thing that I wish I had discovered earlier. It's a kind of filter, but it feels natural to the users. So they like being able to click on things, but you have to download it. So, they really like that. And be prepared to know how to do drill throughs, because whenever you make your first report, everyone's always going to want to drill through. So drill through. Yeah, sorry. Lack of sleep, and I've been talking for 45 minutes. But everyone's always going to want to go through your drill throughs. And check out the marketplace. You might find something that's actually useful. There's a lot of financial, a lot more of the sort of financial graphics that might be useful. See, and you can do some R too. I don't really. Yes, I know R. It's great. It's got compatibility with R if you want to write some R scripts to help clean up your data or whatever. One day I will get back to actually using that. It's a goal. But so sorry, that was a bit random today's introduction. But if you have any requests for further presentations, more data cleaning, very specific questions on Power BI, let us know. Like I said, it's the two of us, and you're going to be listening to us talk every month until December. So I'll take any final questions before we go. Okay. Thank you all for coming. I hope to see you again next month when we are doing data cleaning and standardization.